Okay, Jeff Gigante, welcome to the TBD Pod.
Thanks so much.
I appreciate you being here today. So you are a restaurateur, entrepreneur. You own Forbici, Boulon, what else?
Union.
Yeah. You started Ciccio Restaurant Group.
Yeah, I was a co-founder of Ciccio Restaurant Group and brought that concept here from New York in the mid-90s. Wow. Not to age myself, young man, but yeah, but it's been doing it for a lot of years.
A long road of growth, entrepreneurship.
Yeah, boy, Tampa was different back in those days.
Way different. But I remember I was not living here. I was in college, but in the early 2010s, that to me, in my head, is when the Tampa restaurant scene really picked up.
It did.
And you started to kind of see Fresh Kitchen come along and these different concepts. And it kind of became this cool incubator for these concepts. And then today it's like every other week there's a new announcement of some interesting concept.
There's so much attention and awareness on Tampa, and I think that a lot of people your age up to my age are wanting to move here because the landscape's just so inviting, and we have amazing weather and the people are kind. We have great sports franchises. There's beautiful housing here. You've got beaches very adjacent to where we are. So there's a lot of reasons to move here. Our government is wide open for business. Hospitality is our number one industry. So there's lots of reasons to be wanting to come here. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, we were losing a lot of that attention and awareness to Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach and Boca. And, they weren't really thinking of our coast. Now they are.
Right. Now they are. Yeah. And then obviously since then, Tom Brady's made an appearance here on the Buccaneers, two back-to-back Lightning championships. And remember, too, this is at a time when the whole world is shut down.
Correct.
And we're on TV having a freaking boat parade in the sunshine.
That's right. They're throwing the Lombardi trophy.
There was probably not a better sales pitch for our region than that kind of era, that COVID era.
It really was. Like, as much as the suffering was so large across our country and the world, Tampa was kind of, exploding at that time.
Yeah, 100%.
Our Tampa Bay area people were really coming, and, our governor kind of put his foot down and said, no, we're going to, if you want to be closed, we support you. But if you want to stay open, we're going to allow you. And
personal choice, freedom was at the forefront of the conversation. And he's kind of a guy that's done things disappointing that a lot of people that voted with him don't agree with recently. And then his last run at the election, blah, blah, blah. But at that time,
he was a champion.
Absolutely.
Yep.
He really saved us in a lot of ways.
If
you look at some of the restaurants in the Northeast, on the West Coast,
New York
that
City,
had been in business for 30, 40 years.
I had lots of friends that were in the business for decades in New York City that just dropped their keys with the landlord and walked away.
And it's a hard business to run on a good day. We talked about that before we got rolling here. I want to talk to you about your start, though. You mentioned you were in New York City as an aspiring actor.
That's right.
And you made a jump over to entrepreneurship.
Well, there's a little backtrack there. My senior year at Florida State, I was studying acting for the camera, and got this harebrained idea with my best friend and roommate at the time. We were watching these guys open up a little storefront right on West Tennessee Street. And we walked down there, talked to them, and it was Gumby's Pizza.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was their second location. The first one was at Gainesville on campus. And they were talking about how great it was doing there, and colleges are ripe for delivery takeout pizza. And my best friend at the time, still is, his father was an immigrant from Italy and had opened up pizza restaurants. So I was like, oh my God, we could get your dad to teach us. I've got that friend who's, he could loan us some money. And so we put together a plan and we opened up Gigamo Brothers Pizza, 222 BROS. And that was my senior year at Florida State. And that was my first foray into the entrepreneurship world and owning a restaurant and hospitality. And it was a beautiful disaster. It ended up not working out well, but I got bit by the bug, and I never stopped thinking about that. Because with me, if I do something and I'm not good at it, but I love it and I have a passion for it, I become obsessed with it. And so that's kind of what happened when I went to New York and I was acting, and I saw my acting career just kind of going up and down. And I was waiting tables at like this group, these three brothers had like 5 of the hottest restaurants in New York City. And I was just intoxicated by that. Like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I could do this. I could learn it, maybe pitch to my partner, my then owner, come down to Tampa, because at that time we were building the new Raymond James Stadium. The old sombrero was going down, the new stadium was coming up.
So this is early 90s.
Early 90s, 93, 94. Yeah.
And the energy in New York restaurant scene, I bet that was just,
oh my God,
intoxicating.
It's market one in the world.
Right.
It is to this day. And, they're having their full recovery and heyday. It is where the best and the brightest go. And, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
That is the damn truth.
I pitched that to him, and, at that time, my owner, all he said was, look, you've got very big plans. You got big dreams. All I can promise is, let's go down to show me your town, and I'll tell you if I think it's worthwhile, because I had saved up money. I had some family money here that was, willing to invest with me, but I really needed his buy-in and his prowess to kind of come down and show me, like, get me open. And so he came down. We fell in love with a certain area, Howard Avenue, which was super underutilized at the time, but you had Burns Steakhouse and a few other restaurants popping up here and there.
How did you sell it to him? Because Tampa, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot going on.
Well, it was very calculated. Like, we got, I got a little apartment right there at the Bayshore Royal for him to kind of stay in. Got him a 10-speed bike, a membership at Harbor Island. He was a big tennis player.
So you had this whole kind of plan in place.
It was calculated. At the time, like, I was selling that, all my friends were graduating law school and medical school, and Tampa was bustling, and big sports franchises, and it's a beautiful, riding Bayshore Boulevard to Harbor Island. I knew that was different than what his everyday was in New York City.
Right.
And so, luckily, I didn't know what was going on in his mind, but he was like, he'd been in New York City for 10 years working with his family and a relationship. And he saw Tampa as wide open, a place where he could really plant his flag, which worked, parallel to my dreams. I needed, at that time, he had money, he had knowledge, he had success, and I was wanting all of those things.
Right.
So we came down, we opened up, busier than we ever thought. I was waiting tables on half the entire restaurant.
What was that first concept?
That was Ciccio and Tony's. September of 96.
Wow.
Right there on Howard Avenue. And it's now become Water and Flower.
And did you guys purchase the real estate too at that time?
We did. Well, not at that time. We had a purchase option. And at first, my partner, being smart, is like, let's see if this is even going to work before we're buying a building. We ended up buying that building, I think, for, I don't know, $500,000 and sold it for a lot more money than that. So we ended up buying that before the option expired. I think it was like a 4-year option, and we ended up buying it 2 years in. We knew right away. And it ended up that, that 3-month time period came. I thought for sure he was going to come to me and say, okay, you've got it, kid. I'm going back to New York and all my restaurants. But he ended up saying, look, I'm going to stay. I really love this area. I want, he had young kids then, and he wanted them to be able to come down. And
it's a great lifestyle.
And so it worked out, and we just kept opening restaurants.
Wow.
For the better part of 2 decades.
So when you first opened up that concept, Ciccio and Tony's, what were those first few months like? Because I would imagine you felt a huge weight, right? You've got, some different partners involved who are investing in you, who believe in you. You've got this guy from New York who sounds like he's kind of the big money piece of it, right?
Correct.
Right?
Well, he was the substantial, successful,
expertise.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
all
I needed.
of that.
Yes, absolutely.
And so the whole thing's on you.
So for me,
how old were you at that time?
So I was probably 26, 27.
26 with a dream.
With
and
a dream.
Keys to a restaurant.
And the keys to a restaurant. And, working. And I had a good piece of it, not the majority. That was Jim. And but for me, it was more than I ever dreamt of owning. And I was able to kind of build my own dream, and I worked in it every single day. I probably worked 100 hours a week.
And you're doing anything from picking the right hires to creating the concept of
Absolutely.
food.
Yeah, he was really managing, and I was mostly assistant managing, kind of learning what he was doing as well as waiting tables, because we opened up so busy. And in New York, I was one of his kind of key servers. I worked, very hard, many shifts, made a ton of money. And I was used to handling real volume. Well, when we opened up, it was the busiest restaurant on the street. And a lot of these kids that we had hired were, from Tampa, not really seeing that. And so I ended up doing that for the first 3 to 5 months, I think. Then I was able to step back and start managing actively. And then we started opening, our second restaurant opened in 97.
So
So
only
we
a
could,
few short years
yeah,
later.
1 year. Yeah, 1 year later.
1 year
we opened
later.
up the Ciccio in Tampa Palms.
So after, what's the man's name that
Jimmy Lanza.
Jimmy Lanza.
Yeah.
So when Jimmy's kind of watching this thing progress and
Yeah.
it's successful, he's like, let's go, man. Let's open
Yeah,
another
well,
one.
we talked about this before. It's the people. Well, he had in me somebody who was trustworthy, somebody who wanted to work a lot and really build his own image. And so he could trust that I was going to do what he was trying to direct, and then we could kind of grow from there.
How did you make him think that about you? How did you make
Well, I
him
worked for
believe
him
in
for
you?
5 years in New York City. So he
Right.
saw me kind of raise, I started as a food runner, then became a server, then an assistant manager, then a manager, and, just kind of rose up through the ranks. And he knew that I really wanted, a bigger life for myself. And I think that he took a chance on me. At that time, you only can, best laid plans. Like, he hoped that it was going to work out that way, and it ended up working out.
And so by the time you got to Tampa, he had really grown to know you, watched you progress in his restaurant, et cetera. So
Correct.
he had a sort of confidence in you.
Correct.
Man, so you opened the second location. Talk to me about the second location, because I would imagine, I've never owned a restaurant, but it's probably a whole different animal when you have two different locations, right?
Yes.
And are these two entirely different concepts, or talk to me about that
Yeah, so
opening?
they were the iteration of Cicco's. Actually, our second location was a food court location in West Shore Mall. It was called Rapperia. So we did the wraps. You remember the wrap craze?
Yes.
It's a wrap and all that. So we were doing that in the mall, and that was, that took off very quickly, and we were very popular there. So then the third location was Tampa Palms. A restaurant was for sale. We'd found the spot. We had actually a partner of Jim's from New York many years ago. They grew up together, had moved down, and he was living in this neighborhood. So we talked with him, and he's like, yeah, I'd love to be a part of this. I'll be the guy here. Jeff will be down in South Tampa. And so that's how we created, we took it was called Ultimate Bagel, a little bagel shop. It was probably 2,200 square feet small. And that was Ciccio and Tony's Tampa Palms.
Wow.
So that was our third location. And from there we did St. Pete, and then Howard Avenue, we really started to start to come to fruition. Like, people really started seeing this as like a little bit of a restaurant row.
Yeah.
So then we did Daily Eats, which was our diner, and then Green Lemon next door to that, and continued on. We did the Lodge, and we did Taco Dirty, and
So when
Fresh
I was growing up,
Kitchen.
when I was a little kid in the this was like, mid 90s to early 2000s, my mom used to take me to the old meeting house.
Mhm.
We used to get milkshakes and
That's right.
ice cream
Tuesdays,
after school.
you pay what you weigh for the burger. If you were 100 pounds, you paid 100 pennies. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, man, those were good times. And
Yeah,
then to see it kind of continue on as a diner is a really cool thing.
Yeah.
I love diner food. I think the classic American breakfast is like my favorite food ever.
That's
I could eat
great.
it for dinner
Yeah.
any time of the day. So you kind of saw Howard Avenue as almost like this epicenter of these restaurant concepts, right? Who else was coming in that was not under your group at that time, but you maybe appreciated because it was like, hey, we're kind of all here together.
Well, you had David Laxer, who owned Burns.
Right.
And he was continuing to build on the street. He built Sideburns, and then that became Haven. And then, up and down the street, there was a little more bar business kind of north of Swan.
Right.
Less restaurants. And, it added a dimension where some of the younger kids and the college students were coming down there. But, down by us, there were, so you had Sally O'Neill's Pizza, you had Bella's Trattoria that does very well. Gordon Davis at that time had Le Bordeaux, and then turned that into St. Bart's Island House. So there were players on the street, but, and a lot of people asked us, they're like, you're building all these concepts right next to each other. Aren't you concerned about like saturation?
Right.
Well, we believed that we were creating our own competition within our own concepts, because we were drawing more and more people to the area because they had more, and Daily Eats client was completely different than Ciccio and Tony's, which was completely different than Green Lemon. It was, they were bringing people from different parts of Tampa to Howard Avenue.
Did you ever see, because we're talking about 30 years ago, right? And then into kind of the 2000s. So from what I remember, and kind of even today, it's been recently upgraded, but the actual infrastructure of that neighborhood, like the street always had some potholes. The sidewalk was not nearly big enough for the foot traffic, and it
Yes,
still has challenges today.
it
Did you ever
does.
think that when you were younger? Like,
We
geez, this
did.
is kind of like a crappy area.
Well, because we kept investing dollars into it, and so we'd be in front of city council a lot, and we would talk about this,
Like, hey guys,
we need to widen sidewalks. We need to put more appealing park benches and garbage containers, and a lot of that. Because when we first opened, it was a rough area down by the train tracks there. I used to have to walk our waitresses to their cars because there'd be all kinds of kind of seedy characters along the train tracks, and whatever they were doing was not above, uh, it was shady and scary, and so we didn't want to have any of that element. But again, just like any kind of regentrification, when an area starts to turn, that element starts to find other areas because there's so much light and attention and awareness
yeah.
shown there.
Yeah,
But
people that have moved to Tampa in the last few years probably can't imagine
yeah.
South Howard Avenue having that vibe.
Yeah, we created in the early 2000s an organization called the Soho Business Alliance. And it was basically, all hospitality partners along Howard Avenue that would come together, pay, $500 a year to kind of have a voice, like a lobbying voice to go to city council and
Right.
say, look, we're willing to put our dollars behind our ideas, but we need the city to kind of match. And we got some things kind of accomplished and some standards put in along the avenue, but it's still a long lift. And, from my viewpoint, now that I'm off of Howard Avenue and out of those businesses, I think that, the bar element has kind of started to take over.
Mm,
And so it's pushing some of the, the clientele that we're looking for to Hyde Park and Channelside,
right.
Water Street, and
Right.
West Shore.
Yeah, and of course, as Ybor makes its transition
Yeah,
away
with Daryl, what
from,
he's doing.
you know,
Exactly.
I think those people are looking to party. Where's kind of the second place in everyone's head in Tampa in the city? Howard Avenue, right?
Correct.
That's kind of where it's congregating.
Correct.
It has to go somewhere, but to me, Howard Avenue really could be completely redone in a more effective way.
I agree 100%.
You know, it's
Yep.
it's not nearly at its highest and best use, especially for that infrastructure. It's kind of a shame when you see all these people of all ages bouncing around each other, stepping out into the street, trying to go. It's kind of inexcusable for an area that's so high traffic to not have adequate infrastructure like
I've
that.
been offered
Sounds like you're
several.
working on that
Yeah,
a long time.
I've been offered several locations, or at least been shown that, look, this is coming available in this, and we just kind of steer away from Howard Avenue, and it saddens me because, the first part of my career, my first 25 years, was spent building that and putting so much into it.
So much.
And now that I've kind of stepped out and I'm in, these different business districts and corridors, I choose not to go back there because I really want to see these other areas get built up.
Sure.
And thrive.
Sure, but I'm sure you always have an appreciation for
Oh, I
Howard
do.
Avenue,
It's my heart's there. Driving by those restaurants, I wish them all the best, and I know they do me. And it's just, your life changes, and you go through different seasons of it. And the season I'm in now is really exciting one, and I couldn't be happier doing what I'm doing.
So when you're on this extreme growth trajectory, right? Now, you talked about how you created the concept Fresh Kitchen. Now, Fresh Kitchen got built.
CRG, that was our first that was our first real foray into the grab and go,
Right.
takeout only. And it was new at the time. No one, you had Chipotle's and these other things that were kind of inspiration for us. But, it was definitely a risk going on Howard Avenue, especially down where we were, because that was all the dine-in kind of,
Right.
full service. And so, but Fresh Kitchen was just so timely for where the American palate was heading. They wanted good farm to
Real
table food,
right.
real food, but they wanted it to taste good and they wanted it to be good for you.
Yes.
So Fresh Kitchen hit on all cylinders, and my co-founder Jimmy Lanza, his son Stevie kind of pioneered that because he was really into the health and wellness lifestyle, you know what I mean? So he was like, this is what I want to eat, and I've got to go to other places out of Tampa to eat it. You know, I want to do this. And so we were all on board, and we're able to create this really thing that, you know, I think that Fresh Kitchen, out of all of CRG, that's going to be their massive growth vehicle. And I can see that being hundreds and hundreds of store.
I was just going to
worldwide.
say, I could see that being a nationwide, if not
I think they're
international.
18 or 19 stores, but I think that their growth is going to accelerate, and they're going to do really well with that.
They have one in Manatee County, kind of Sarasota area, on University Parkway at UTC.
Yeah.
And every time I go down there, it's like always packed line out the door. So
they're doing great.
I know they're killing it. And now, right? And really the bowl thing started to blow up 10, 15 years ago. And then
More than that.
Yeah, and then it got
we were doing bowls in
what
the
year?
late 90s, or probably. So we used to go down to Miami, you know, so we would travel for food. That was our passion. So we'd see, like, you know, Miami was very cosmopolitan and, you know, had a big South American influence. So we would go down and eat at this restaurant called Chicken Kitchen, which was just so timely and awesome. And they would do these bowls, rice, vegetables, a little bit of salad, chicken, sauces. And so we came back and we're like, my God, we gotta, because when we first opened Ciccio and Tony's, it was straight up Italian.
Right.
Like, you know, red sauce, green sauce, like it was real. And, you know, we saw that palate changing, so we continually would evolve. And, you know, so now if you ever went to Ciccio's, the last iteration, Ciccio's Water, before it turned into Water Flower, I mean, we were like Pacific Rim, Pan Asian. You had sushi.
That's the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah, so that's what we were. And so we were doing bowls before anybody was doing bowls.
Wow.
And
then you saw all these, you know, there's an Asian bowl place and this bowl place. And
which goes back to my passion for what I do and why I do it and why I believe I'm successful, as well as those guys are, is because we would look around the world and, you know, definitely around our country on where food was moving, like what was coming up and what was hot. And we would take that and put our own iteration on that.
Was there a particular place you guys would always congregate? Like, was it Miami?
So we would go to Miami a lot. We would go to New York a lot. We would go to Los Angeles a lot, Chicago. You know, we would travel Atlanta.
Kind of where all those forward-thinking, conceptual people are, right?
Correct.
The innovation is in those places.
That's right. And, you know, evolve or die.
Yeah.
You know, so we wanted to constantly be innovating and, you know, work harder than our counterparts. And
you've had a very long career with all these different concepts, and then also the scaling portion of it too, which we'll talk about, kind of the business side of it. Do you still have that in your head today? Always be innovating, always be creative, or have you found something that works and you're sticking to it?
So what works for me is this: surveying the culinary landscape of where we are, where I live, what's working, what's not working, and what's missing. And so we identify niches that are missing, and we travel the world to find out who does that really well. And we take that and we create our own version of that and then come and place it. There was no big brasseries here, right?
Right.
You had one little Mizu in the bottom of the Le Méridien, but it wasn't done well.
Right.
And there's, you know, Le Bordeaux was a French restaurant, but, you know, that had a 20-year heyday and it came and went. No one was doing that. And so to do a big brasserie, every great town, New York City, you got Balthazar, you got the Odeon, you got, you know, all these different, LA, and you know.
It's going to kill me. What's the one on Grand Central next to Oxford Exchange? I don't know why I can't think of the name of it. Been there for a long time.
Oh, Mise en Place.
Right, but that's more of a
That's
a
more
white
French eclectic.
Right.
That's my friend Marty. He's amazing. And Marianne, they're unbelievable at what they do. But that is more of a fine dining restaurant than a brasserie.
Table.
Like a brasserie to the French is what a trattoria is to the Italian.
I was
It's
gonna
an
ask you,
every day,
describe-
all day, every meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner.
High energy.
And, you know, the brasseries from Paris, they would use food from all the different regional countries around them.
Interesting.
They'd have Austrian food. They'd have German food. They'd have Italian. Like the brasseries in French, you have an unbelievable lasagna. You've got a great, you got a strudel. You got a beef stroganoff. You have all these different types of food all featured in this very comfortable, approachable,
right,
all day, 3 meal part. restaurant.
Less of the white linen with the guys in the
Correct.
tuxedos.
That's
more
exactly right.
energy, some cocktails, people laughing.
Laid back luxury, big,
Yes.
beautiful build outs, but yeah, very approachable food.
Big, beautiful build out.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe the first time I walked into that place. It is
Yeah, I
stunning.
pinch myself every time I go into
It is almost like an art deco. You feel like you're in the Great Gatsby walking in that
Thank you. I
place.
appreciate
It's
it.
very, very
It's like
well
a big
done.
jewelry box right down there on Channel Side.
It really is.
Yeah.
And when you were creating this, talk to me about specifically Boulon, right? Because you said that it didn't exist here, or at least the iteration you had in mind. Did you travel to France and visit these different
So I've
places?
been to France and we've eaten at those brasseries, but the inspiration for Boulon for me is Keith McNally's Balthazar in New York City. It's one of my favorite restaurants. It's classic to
Pull
this
that up,
day.
David, just so I can see it.
Yeah, look at Balthazar. So Balthazar is more in line of the French brasseries, so it's a little more dark and gloomy. I wanted a brighter, more modern interpretation of what he did. But that restaurant, to this day, you go in and like, oh, that's Robert De Niro. Liza Minnelli's here.
It's the gathering.
It is
place.
the spot in New York City.
So did you come up with the concept after Water Street was announced, or was this in your head before the
So Water Street was
location?
announced. I was always kind of making sure that I wanted to throw my hat in there, but really, so this is Balthazar.
Okay, very
And if
cool.
you pull up pictures of the restaurant, like it's just
This
classic.
is sick.
Yeah.
I love the red booths.
It's like next time you're in New York City,
Yeah.
you have to go eat there. You'll be like, oh my gosh.
Oh, very cool.
And
Wine
it's just busy
bar.
and it's kind of the centerpiece. And it's like, Cafe Central, everything revolves around that restaurant.
Very cool.
And so, we wanted the spot in Water Street. And, that's the beauty of my life. Everything great has come from relationships that I have, amazing, deep-seated relationships. And so my partner, Andrew Wright, who owns Franklin Street and Ally Capital, and he was really integral in that whole Water Street development. And he was very close with Mr. Vinnick and, just really had a sense of purpose for us to kind of get that space. And, at that time I had wound out of CRG. So I was just, Jeff Gigante. I did Forbici, which was a great success for the city and people loved it and believed in it. And they believed in me. You know what I mean? Like you don't buy the concept from someone. You buy the trust of, the people operating it. You know what I mean? Like they
100%.
can rely on me knowing I'm going to give a great value for the product that we're putting on the table, and they're going to have this similar concept and similar experience every time they come in. So I had that going for me, but like to take down the #1 location in Water Street, that's a spot that Cameron Mitchell from
How
Ocean
large
Prime.
is this place, first of all?
So it's 7,100 square feet with another 2,500 square feet. So it's almost 10,000 feet with patios and everything.
How many people can eat there? How many seats?
So we
is
have
it?
336 seats.
336. And that freaking bar, how many people can sit at that bar?
120.
It's such a huge
insane.
bar.
Yeah, the
It
bar's
is-
full. Like when my designer came to me with that bar, I was like, oh shit, like how am I going to fill this bar? It's a lot of people, but we have a belief that the bar is the central energy. It's the heart of the concept. It's where all the people are gathering and singles come in and, couples come in and they're either sitting having lunch, watching TV at the, you know what I mean? Like it's all that activity.
Whenever I go on a date with my wife, there's almost an excitement we have when the table's not ready to be like,
Yeah.
let's go get a cocktail,
Get a
at, the
cocktail at the
bar,
bar.
It's
People
fun.
watching,
Let's get a
the
quick little
energy.
snack. Let's
That's
get a
right.
little appetizer.
I love that.
up
So
here.
so if you notice any of my restaurants that you go into, 50% of the dining area is bar. Forbici, you have that entire bar with the high top right there
Right.
and those little two top.
I didn't think about it like that. There's a huge.
It's 50% of the bar. Union, that whole downstairs to the left is all bar.
Wow.
And so same thing with Boulon. We built that bar out. And my designer, Zeb, I was just talking with him today. He's like, don't worry, you're going to fill that bar. That bar's going to be filled.
So you didn't necessarily have pushback on it, but you yourself were like, damn, this is an ambitious
I love the
piece.
design. Like that was the first restaurant I've designed in my life where there was less than 1% to 2% changes made after that initial design presentation.
Pull up
nailed
pictures
it.
of Boulon because
Yeah.
if you're listening and you haven't checked it out, please do. It probably is the most beautiful restaurant, and I'm not even blowing smoke.
Well,
like,
thank you. I appreciate
how
that,
do
brother.
you compete with this thing?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's-
it is. It really is unbelievable. And you've also opened the bakery,
The Boulon Bakery,
which is kind of an interesting kind
tremendous,
of
yeah.
ode to the
Well,
European
that's
lifestyle.
right. Well, and if you go to Bathel's R, right to the right is their bakery. You know, you can get anything to go and take out and coffee and sweets and stuff. But, you know, this has really become,
look at this place.
it's crazy. It's
so freaking awesome, man.
I'm just so proud of it.
I've been there. I think I've been there not that many times. Call it like 5 times.
Okay.
But every time I go, you're in there. This episode is brought to you by the official remodeler of the TBD Podcast, Kohler House Remodeling Company. Built on the belief that every homeowner deserves a premium experience, Kohler House is redefining high-end home remodeling with their commitment to integrity, craftsmanship, and quality communication. Their work speaks for itself, from condos in the towers of Channelside to 100-year-old homes in South Tampa, creating spaces that are both stunning and functional. What sets Kohler House Remodeling Company apart is their dedication to not only transforming homes into beautiful spaces, but to elevating the standard of residential general contracting. From concept to completion, every detail is handled with care, ensuring a process that's as smooth as the results are impressive. To learn more, check out our partner's website at kohlerhouse.net, KOHLERHAUS.net. This episode is sponsored by Chansey Architecture and Interior Design. Rooted in the heart of Ybor City for over 35 years, Walt Chansey and his team are trailblazers in their field. Beyond their work across the United States and the Bahamas, Chansey has shaped some of the most iconic residential and commercial spaces that serve as gateways to Cigar City, including Casa Marti and Casa Gomez. What sets Chansey Design apart is their ability to preserve the soul and character of historic buildings while seamlessly integrating modern design and functionality. They blend tradition with innovation, creating spaces that honor the past while meeting today's needs. Check out their work at www.chanseydesign.com.
I'm there a lot, yeah. So
this was in the beginning.
Yeah,
too.
in the beginning, yeah. So I spent a lot of time at the places when they first opened, only because, like, you know, I don't really have any function in my group. And, you know, Andrew, who's kind of helping us success map and set up organizationally because he's a master at what he does. And, like, you know, I always want to have way smarter people in my group than me. And so Andrew says, listen, you know, if we get this right, you won't do anything. You'll inspire all of your teammates and your leadership, and you'll just let them know, yes, this is hitting exactly what we want. So I just really observe and report to my leaders. And Heather Rivas, who's our director of operations, who's the best that I've ever worked with. Like, I used to think and like hold like a little pride that I was a really good GM until I opened that restaurant with her. And I realized, oh my God, I paled in comparison in every category of leading than she does. Like, she's this unbelievable, and she's just organically, naturally just rose the ranks and like took over the director of operations position. So she runs all of these restaurants with me and my partner Joe and Andrew right there in, you know, her little armchair.
Go make that picture larger, the one you have kind of high. Oh, you do have it highlighted. Yeah, it's freaking beautiful, man.
It's beautiful.
Look at the size of that bar. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Let's talk about good people. David and I just yesterday were talking about kind of how to scale my team in my real estate business, and then this whole like podcast thing, this media thing that I'm doing.
That's exploded. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's right.
I've oddly...
And we talked about this before. You've got to do this and love it so much that if there's one other person listening out there in the world, you're like, that's good. I'm good with that.
That, but also, I don't care if it makes money. I'm sure my team wouldn't want to hear that, but
they're like, what about us?
I truthfully do this because I love talking to people. I love talking about
Well, you're
Tampa.
very natural at it and very comfortable.
Thank you.
And you've got a, you know, I know Jeff and I've listened to him talk. You've got a comfortability with people that make them feel very open to sharing.
Yeah.
Which is great for us as the listener to be able to tune in and go, oh my God, I never heard him say that. I said that 2 or 3 different times when you sat with him.
I was going to almost stop Jeff Vinnick on the podcast because he was saying some stuff and he was like, well, I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm like, dude, we're live right now.
I know. He's very, exactly.
You got to keep it.
But he's comfortable and you've got that great sensibility. So kudos for you.
Thank you. We were just talking last night though about adding members to the team, and we were talking about delegating tasks and how when you bring someone onto a team, they have to bring the whole team up. If you're always telling someone what to do and, well, I'm not really sure what my role is here. What do I do today? You got to find people that take initiative.
Absolutely.
Like this woman you're talking about, she probably comes to you with something you've never thought of, but it's like, dude, that is genius.
Yes.
How did
Yep.
you? So this is a long road that we've talked about from your first restaurant to Boulon, which
Yeah.
how many employees are out at Boulon?
Boulon, we have a little over 211, I think.
211. And then
yeah.
you mentioned in your next level brands group is approaching
600, yeah.
600
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So to talk about gathering the right people, delegation, the right executives and managers to pass down information.
Yeah.
Obviously you could talk all day about it, but how do you get the right people on board? Do you pick up people quick, put them through a sort of test, and if they don't perform, let them go? Do you take chances?
So we hire slow and fire fast. And when I say hire slow, we're always hiring. Every position in every restaurant we're always hiring. And, we have GMs are like, you have a GM ad out, or is my job okay? Is your job's perfect right now?
Damn.
But we're always looking to grow. And really, the strength of our ability to grow is all about the people. Like, we've got tremendous infrastructure, a great investor group that is like chomping at the bits for more, but we can't grow more until we have the right people in place. And, you can change the people through inspiration, or you got to change the people.
So you almost have like your job is always available
Always.
thing in the air with
100%.
these people.
Because there's unlimited upward mobility in our company. Heather Rivas is a perfect example. And again, like I told you, everything great comes to my life through relationship. So one day, 3 years ago, a nice couple was in the restaurant at Forbici, and I was there. Like you said, I'm always there. I was at the tables talking to this lovely, older couple. And, the dad is like, my daughter's in this business. She's excellent. She'd be great here. I know you guys are putting out big plans and grow, but I'm going to have her reach out to you. And, for me, that comes in one ear and goes out. I'm like, yeah, okay, great. She's working at, some Waffle House or whatever. Yeah, I didn't get too into it. But I was like, yeah, please have her. We're always looking to grow. We always need great people. And she's as good as you guys are. I was making jokes with them and they were great. So sure enough, 2-3 weeks later, I get a DM in my Instagram. She's like, hey, my name's Heather. I work for Sean Brock, one of the premier chefs in the world, opened up Husk in Charleston. And now I opened up Husk Savannah. I'm the GM here, but we're pregnant with the baby and my parents live in Sarasota and they went to your restaurant. And I think my dad may have talked to you, told me to reach out to you. So I, being curious, I'm like, who's this girl? So I look up and I start doing research and I'm like, oh my God. And we were looking actively, and we were trying to hire outside of the state for the leadership positions in these new restaurants. Excuse me.
Why were you looking outside the state?
Because, I've been in Tampa for so many years, and I wanted somebody who was unfazed or unfettered by the Tampa food landscape.
Right.
That worked here and worked there, and we're doing everything kind of like everyone does here.
Right.
I wanted a different mindset. I wanted somebody who'd come with big city experience. And so we were looking actively outside, and it's hard to draw people,
Sure,
like uproot their whole life
Right.
and come to Tampa. And so this, I talked to my partner, Joe, and I was like, I think I got a whale on the line here. I think we need to talk with her. So we did a Zoom with her like the next day. And from the Zoom, we just kind of all fell in love together.
Wow.
And I said, Heather, I'd love to fly you and your husband and your baby into town. You can see, she's like, oh, that's fine. I'll save you money. Like I'll stay with my parents in Sarasota, but I'll eat at the restaurants. And so we met in person and we made an offer that she couldn't refuse on the spot.
Wow.
And so she came down
You
to
knew
be
that quick. What was it about
it's
her?
a people.
So, but it's almost like you're
What was
explaining-
about her
It's
is-
not even like her resume.
No,
It's not even
well, her
the ex-
resume was amazing,
Of
and
course,
she
but
worked for
that's
some
not
of
the whole book, right? That's not the whole
So-
reason.
It was two things. I researched on her Instagram, like her leaving post when she was leaving the restaurant in Charleston, and what some of the servers had said about her. Like, oh my God, I'm actually now thinking of moving to Georgia because you're going to be there. Like when you find a leader that's, that is just so adored, and, servers will walk through walls for you. There's something there. There's something in her constitution, that fortitude, that upbringing, that somebody you want to go to war with. Like you want
Right.
her in your foxhole. And so when I met her, we just talked about things, and I told her my vision and what I believed to be important. And we just really synced on those things. And, you know, she was way outside of our salary range. But I talked to my partners and I said, this will either be a bad investment that we make and we'll know very quickly, or it'll be the cheapest investment we've ever made. And it ended up being the latter. And we opened Boulon, like, you know, Heather and I just, you know, I'm an emotional guy, Italian, very passionate, you know, and I've gone through a lot of shit in my life. I've gone through a lot of stuff. And so when I connect these people, like, she's so much more than an employee to me. Like, she's part of the family. And so we recently talked about like our future and where we're going and how integral she was. And I told her, I said, you know, I was so foolish to think that I could have done what I set out to do without finding you. Like, I'm so blessed. I know it was God working in favor to say, you're going to open something that, you know, and it's funny. Everybody said, oh my God, this restaurant's going to be unbelievable. Like, for me, I'm a bit hesitant, and I'm a bit tempered and measured. Like, you know, I was like, yeah, this could be good, but we got to make sure that we put out the right food with the right people, the right hospitality. It's a big restaurant. We had opening in phases. Like, we didn't want to open up the outside right away. Like, we wanted to make sure that we could crawl before we walk, before we run, before we sprint. And if I didn't have that woman to open that restaurant, I don't know how we would have ever, you know, knowing myself, and I suffer no lack of confidence, we would have got there, but it would have been a way harder trek than what it was we did with her.
So she's instrumental.
She was integral.
Wow.
Integral.
And
like,
now she's climbed that ladder.
She's climbed up. And so she's overseeing all of these restaurants and inspiring all the leaders, and, you know, together she's going out and giving out the orders that we're all creating.
I asked Vinnick the same question because he's done an incredible job of finding the right people to execute every big thing he's ever done.
He talked about Todd Lewicki, I'm sure.
Funny enough, I think David, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure he said he went to Boulon and brought a potential employee. I think it was at the executive level. Yeah, funny enough. And he said he watched the way people would treat the servers. He would watch how they talk to everyone. And he went really deep on the character and the personalities of someone versus, oh, I used to work here, so you should hire me because of my experience. It's almost
he's all about people.
Yeah.
And you know, you saw what he did when he sold and gave these unbelievable bonuses to everybody. That is more character of a man that is invested in his people, knowing that without those people giving their blood, sweat, tears, energy, love, passion, it would never become what it has become.
No.
And I look at him as the genius behind it because he's the one who inspired it all. And he had that vision. And that vision took a lot of moxie to come and say, you know, I'm going to change the cityscape. And we're going to have a real downtown.
At a time when almost no one believed in the city.
Correct.
Maybe him and Bob Buckhorn.
Yeah. And Channel Side had already been ventured and failed.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it was a big nothing burger.
Oh, totally nothing
and
burger.
Downtown was, you know, like I said, the city planners 100 years ago, I would have said, why don't we put everything kind of towards the water?
Duh, right.
You know what I mean? You got beautiful waterfront.
Florida, after all.
You know, but they were thinking the water for us is industry.
Exactly.
It's shale, it's
shipping,
component, it's shipping, it's commerce. It's not waterfront and beauty. So he was the one to be able to kind of say, let's reimagine this and let's build, you know, beautiful commerce right down by the water.
That vision is so important, but just as important is the people that execute and manage and maintain and work day to day, all the way down to your servers.
Yeah. Well, Jeff's such a humble guy that when he comes and dines with him, you know, I always like just kind of love on him and gush on him and thank him. And he thanks me. And he's sincere in thanking me for bringing this amazing concept to his development.
You need each other.
Yeah.
You really do need each other because he's creating the space, but you're creating the energy and the action.
Yep. He's creating the space and we're space making.
And when you go down to Water Street today and you see people walking their dogs and getting ice cream with their family and enjoying a cocktail at the Boulon bar.
Or
It's
walking
like,
right out of their residence.
it's like,
There was no
holy
residence
there
downtown.
was
Very
nothing.
few.
It was warehouses and dirt
Correct.
lots.
And 5 o'clock, like, the old cartoons when the whistle blows, everyone's gone.
It's
That's
so
what
tr-
happened downtown.
People don't understand
They
that
couldn't get out of there
it
fast enough.
literally was like that.
It was.
And to watch it transform and have there be so much life and energy, it is an amazing place to be. There's people here that have an old school mindset that, they don't appreciate it in the traffic and this or
Right.
that. But I think that's
Those are the
short-sighted.
growing pains of having a
That's
very
exactly right.
successful big city.
That's exactly right. And you can do it the right way where you're smart about it
Correct.
and it's well done. And I think Water Street is a perfect example.
Oh, it's great.
I mean,
And
look at the
their phase
smaller
2
lanes of traffic, the larger sidewalks. It's a comfortable place. People
I've already
enjoy.
told them, I want the Boulon space on phase 2, whichever that space is going to be.
You would do another
100%.
Water Street.
I cannot wait to do it. I've
Can
got
you,
an amazing
can you share some
concept.
ideas or
So in our, we have a big city steakhouse that is, I think, not done to the way that I'd like to do it. We have an amazing elevated Mexican concept. Just think of Boulon, but Mexican, with a big
Ooh.
tequila offering and very sexy and coastal fare and unbelievable. We've got a really cool Asian concept, like, dim sum, sushi, like, all of those great iconic plates, but done in a little different, more shareable way.
So I've always, because we talked earlier about like finding the market demand, but then finding the vacancy in the market,
Correct.
where something doesn't exist. I've always thought of like a meat market-esque concept, because to me, meat market is like a sexy version of a steakhouse, right?
Yes.
With the girl and the whole thing.
Correct.
I've always thought like an Asian version of that, like
Yes.
the geisha almost,
Yeah,
like
Budokan
thing.
or Tao,
Yes,
but done in a little more
Tao's the perfect
subdued.
example.
Yeah. So
That is
so I've got that concept.
oh my Lord.
And then I've got another really, it's got to be the perfect spot, and it's just not presented itself, but I've got like a really kind of cool northern beachy,
Ooh.
like summer house type concept for waterfront.
So the waterfront space to me,
Yes.
in our region is totally underutilized.
Completely.
We need.
I mean, you got American Social, and they're great for what they do, but it's
Sure.
like a Bennigan's on the water, and they do,
and they kill it.
They
And-
do the tavern food. They do great fare. They've
and
got
it's-
music.
and
It's
it's
good
football,
energy.
and it's sports. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I think something a little more sophisticated than that, in my style of what we want to do, I think that would crush. But it's got to be, and that's why I rely on my partners, Andrew and Joe. Both have real estate background. Andrew's amazing with that. Like that concept is right here in my head, but I need the space to go. That's it.
I totally agree. I think it would kill. I'm imagining cocktails, a beautiful
Yes.
view,
Boat up.
waterfront. Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
Ooh.
beautiful pagodas out on the dock where people can kind of have their boat right there and then have tables and
So almost like a oyster catchers, but in the city, like closer in the city.
yeah, you can't boat up to oyster catchers, but
You
it's
can't. I
beautiful.
thought they had a dock.
I don't know. I mean, maybe
Maybe I'm wrong.
I've never, and I used to go there for their brunches, amazing brunches,
Yeah.
but I don't ever remember like boat activity. There was
I
a
might be
place
wrong.
in Lauderdale back in the 80s and 90s called Shooters. And it was more kind of clubby, but it was very see and be seen, very cool, very sexy, very white with blue linen, like, just really cool. And, Richard Melman has a concept called Summer House in Chicago that's fantastic like that. But I love it because they've got like sushi and they've got burgers and big salads and they've got pizza and pasta. And so a lot of these different things swimming in my head, but like when I find the right location, I'll know exactly what to do with that.
So it sounds like you have more concepts and ideas than there is actually space to implement these things.
I do.
I've heard the same thing on a smaller scale with restaurants too. Is that a
Yes.
challenge in Tampa?
It is a challenge right now because real estate, commercial real estate is super expensive. So you really have to have density and have a great concept and have some deep pockets behind you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can't just get open and need to be busy on week one in order to stay open. And a lot of people in my industry, they get attracted to this industry because, a lot of people come in and, I've had many friends where they've come to me like for consulting. And I'm like, look, give me 50 grand, turn around, I'm going to kick you in the butt. And that's the best you'll ever do in the restaurant business. Like, don't do this, because it takes all you have all the time, and you've got to really understand the metrics behind the financial part of it. Like, it is a business, and it's a business of pennies, and there's millions of holes in the floor where all those pennies fall in.
So I have an ambition to open up a cafe of some sort.
Okay, I like it.
I've been to Europe a few times, specifically Italy. I'm totally inspired by their cafe lifestyle. I love the
awesome.
idea of waking up. We even try to do this in our neighborhood. My wife and I, as we talked before, live south of Gandy. Us and like 50 other families with strollers I say attempt, it's risky to walk around here, but walk to this little cafe. It's called South of Gandy Cafe on McDill and Interbay.
Okay.
Kind of a little hole in the wall spot. It's really great, but people want that walk to cafe. People are having pastries and a little cappuccino, and it reminds me of Europe. And I've thought, we kind of don't now. Boulon has the bakery, right? Which is essentially an attempt.
That's what that is.
That's
what that's become.
Now, do you have your own tables inside of the bakery?
So we have tables outside, but we've just recently, the beginning of February, have opened up. You know, as soon as you walk into Boulon, that first right, all those tables, we've opened that up because it's become so popular that people are like, look, we don't want to eat our egg sandwiches out of a box. Could we have plates and sit in here?
That's what I'm talking
about. So we
about.
listen to them. And so we're doing it. So now you can order, you'll get a number. You'll go sit that number on the table, and we're like, oh, 32. Garrett, we're going to bring your eggs right over and your coffee, and which is truly what the essence of a brasserie is: breakfast, lunch, dinner. Yeah, we were serving breakfast, but it was all to go. And until we listened and saw, oh, these people, you know, because there's so many people living there.
Right.
So they roll out, you see them in their pajama bottoms with their dog.
Yeah.
And they want, like, you know, a beautiful oat milk latte and to have an egg sandwich on a croissant and just sit there and enjoy themselves.
We had a meeting downtown this morning, and David lives in Gasworks. He took the trolley to Water Street, popped off.
Yeah.
You'll have to go to Boulon and get a latte there next time. But he went to the Addition. And I just think that more and more people, as Tampa evolves, are going to want that lifestyle.
They are.
And like I mentioned about my neighborhood, that's not walkable, that has broken sidewalks, that is sketchy to walk around. People are still trying to walk. People still want that lifestyle. So my idea was like exactly that, right? A sort of cafe. I actually bought a building in Riverside Heights. I don't know that I'll be doing it there, but that's why I wanted to talk to you about it, because in my head, I'm just a real estate guy, right? That's all I know.
You're more than that, but okay.
Well,
I mean, come on.
I'll tell you what I'm not: a restaurant guy.
Yeah.
Okay, the hiring, the firing, how much food do you order? Blah 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 blah.
I can help you with all of that.
There's a lot.
My pleasure.
There's a lot that goes into it.
There is.
But
you also don't need to make it that difficult. I mean, you can do it in a very smart, sensible way. And what's beautiful, just like everything's evolving, technology is evolving, our food service providers have evolved to unbelievable pre-made product that you could buy, heat, and serve. And so, like, it doesn't all need to be made from scratch. And there's ways that you can do it. Like, you know, so the financial matrix is like, there's this thing called prime costs. And prime costs is your food cost and your labor cost. And those, you keep those below 55 to 60%, you're going to make money.
Interesting.
It's just natural to that. But there's things that you can do that save you when you're not having to hire a chef that's 80 grand starting plus. But you can hire a cook who can take product that's already come in mostly prepped, assemble it, put out a good product. Now, magically, you're like, oh my God, this is profitable.
This is the business side of it that interests me so much, because when I go into a place like Boulon, first of all, that must have been multi-million dollar build out. I don't know if you can share specifics on that.
I think we spent just under $6 million for Boulon to build it out.
I figured it was close to 10 just by looking at it.
Well, so, again, that was, discount lunch kid, single mom, high school educated. For me, I wanted to be as sharp as I could with the pencil to make sure that we were saving our investors money so we could get up and be profitable quicker. And so it still was, it went over budget by over $1 million, but for us, it was a very good investment because we ended up coming out doing double the business that we thought we were.
Double.
So there's lots of room there for forgiveness once you're doing those kind of volume and that,
And
those numbers.
to pick such a strategic A+ location
Yes.
matters a lot too,
Yeah.
right? And it would kind of have been a shame for you to skimp on the budget there and not do it the right
Well,
way.
and that's another thing. Like, this was my coming out party. So yeah, I had Forbici. That was my first restaurant on my own outside of my CRG affiliation. I was doing that on my own. And as soon as that opened and worked, I was like, oh, I can do this. And then partnering with Andrew Wright, who's, been a mentor and a dear friend of mine. Again, everything comes from amazing relationships. That relationship, he's like, look, I want you to dream as big as you want. I was like, be careful. He's like, no, you be careful, because you build this big dream restaurant, you're going to have to run it and operate it and make it profitable. And so we had this amazing relationship together. And my partner, Joe, who's, so integral, he's on the food and beverage side, but, a guy whose passion, he was semi-retired. He was an investor with me over at CRG, and we become very close friends. So when I left CRG to kind of do my own thing, he's like, look, you don't need me, but I'd love to invest with you. I'd love to working with you. And he's a wine guy, like deep into wine. Like, that's his passion. He's got, 1,000 bottle cellar, and, he just knows everything about wine. And I didn't know, I'm not a big wine drinker. So I'm thinking, oh my God, he's invested with me. He's a dear friend of mine. So I went to him when we were first doing Forbici, and I'm sorry, I'm ADHD, so I go on tangents, but this is great. I said to him, I said, Joe, would you help me and create the beverage and wine list for Forbici? And he, you thought like I gave him the big toy he wanted when he was 9 under the Christmas tree. He's like, would I ever? He's, and so I just saw the care and concern and the detail and how much love he put into creating that list. And so when we first opened Forbici, he was just an investor. He wasn't part of my plan at all. But like 2 weeks in, like, we opened up slammed, like the mayor coming in, the chief of police, it was a party, and it was just awesome.
So he must be the brains behind one of my favorite, probably my favorite Tampa cocktail, which is the Sicilian margarita with that little blood orange.
100%. That was his creation. And, we go to the best and the brightest. We work with an amazing group out of Miami, but they're global, called Unfiltered Hospitality, to create our cocktail lists. He does the wine, and we create the cocktail list. And they created a cocktail list, but that cocktail was not on it. And so he's like, I want this. This is so Italian. And so that's one of our top selling cocktails. But yeah, so 2 weeks into our run at Forbici, I look up, and Joe is standing side by side with me. He's never left. I'm like, listen, bro, you're going to lose your family. Like, you've got a beautiful, you're semi-retired. You're building your beach house in Anna Maria. I was like, don't. And he goes, listen, my wife is so excited for me. She's never saw me more excited. I'm so passionate about this. I'd love to be a part of it. And I told him at that time, I said, I had to get this one restaurant open, but I'm going to open more, and I'd love you to come on that journey with me.
So that's where my kind of infatuation has started. Like, I kind of feel that energy too.
Yeah.
Right? I think that, to open a concept and be excited about it and have in your head what it could look like and what some of the things on the menu would be. So that's kind of where it sounds like it begins. It kind of begins with that bug.
That little inception, that little tiny, like, you thought, I want a cafe that's walkable.
Yeah.
I want stroller parking out front. Like, I want to create something. And that's how it all starts, with that concept. And you labor and belabor and constantly work on this concept. And then you create it, and then you start to build it, and you raise money, or you do it all on your own. And
you meet
hire
the
people. And the people that are coming are really vibing with it. And for me, like, it becomes addicting. Like, and like, I always tell my teams when we talk, like, the most exciting nighttime period in my entire career is the night before we open a new concept. Because for me, it's me standing in a mirror going, okay, you've come to this point.
Showtime.
Now it's up to them. Like, are they going to get what it is we created and labored over? Like, are they going to understand the nuances of that pesto sauce with the pine nut sprinkled on top? Like, every little thing.
Why do you think the public has had no trouble aligning themselves with that vision in your head?
I think because simply they trust me. They've seen me build all these restaurants. They've seen me with my charitable arm, and, like, are coming from a place of yes and how deep I am in the community, and I'm a family guy and my kids live here and I want them to have a really cool place, walkable, like, with all these concepts. And I think that, again, doing what you say, when you say, and continuing to just replicate that builds, consumer trust.
So it's almost like you yourself have established a brand, meaning the Ritz-Carlton comes to Tampa, people know what they're getting, right? It sells out. That first building sold out before they put a shovel in the ground. In the same way, Jeff Gigante's building a new restaurant. We got to go check it out, right? You've built this following, which gives you the confidence to dive deeper
Yes.
and create these concepts and have the faith that, hey, when we open this thing up, the people will come.
Right. But there's a wrinkle on that. So when I left CRG, I started Gigante Hospitality. That's what was going to own and operate my restaurants, Gigante Hospitality. And we built Forbici with that. That Forbici opened as a Gigante Hospitality Group. So when I met with Andrew and talked about creating something bigger, I didn't want my name on it. I wanted it to be something other. That's how next level, because we kept talking and the words next level kept coming up. Like, I want this to be next level. Tampa's going to the next level. Like, I want what we're doing. And so we just said, because I said, I don't want this to be synonymous with me. That ties me to every concept. If people aren't seeing me, they're like, well, he's not really involved, or maybe it's not as good without him. I was like, I want to be a collective of the best and the brightest in hospitality. So I want our brand name to stand for excellence and us pushing the bar, constantly pushing the envelope and becoming better and better. And so Next Level Brands was born. And, it's freed me up to bring people like Heather Rivas and Joe Gugino and Andrew Wright and all these other great leaders that we have, in order to let them have true authorship and ownership in the actual concepts that they're running and not feel like, everyone's coming in going, hey, is Jeff here?
Right.
One day I'm going to have 30 restaurants. I can't be in all of those. So I want that standard of excellence to be met by our leaders to where they're like, this is all based off of our vision, which comes from the top and trickles down, but we're all fulfilling that vision every day.
And what is the vision? Is it to...
The vision's to elevate the culinary landscape of the Tampa Bay area.
And
every community that we go into.
And every community that you go into.
Correct.
Do you have an ambition to almost be like a Boulon Brands where you've got thousands of concepts?
So you say that, and I love it because Chris Sullivan, who's the founder of Outback Steakhouse, along with Bob Basham and Tim Gannon, Chris has been just a huge inspiration and mentor to me for 25 years.
Wow.
He's one of my biggest investors, and he's still mentoring me to this day. And he's the one who, I'm really leaning on for the growth of Forbici. He's like, look, build 2 or 3 of them locally. Let's see if they do what we believe they can do. And then we'll talk about a regional plan where we can expand. And he's like, Jeff, I don't see 300 Forbicis, but I see 20 to 40 for sure. And so with a guy like that, he's my Tom Brady in the restaurant industry.
That's some juice to hear that.
He's built over 1,000 restaurants, and they're successful to this day and grow on and on and on. And so to have him there saying, this is how we're going to grow. So I believe Forbici is our growth vehicle, but that doesn't mean that Boulon or Union couldn't be replicated in other cities that, but they've got to really be great locations. Like, we pay millions of dollars in rent, but we're in the most amazing locations, and rent is relative. You're paying lots of rent because tons of eyeballs are walking by your place every single day. And all I need is to have them come in once, and then I got them. So
come in once, love it, they're hooked.
And then they're bringing their friends, and they're having their birthday party or their wedding.
Yeah, yes. Right. It kind of spreads like wildfire. What is, if you could kind of lay out those overall concepts, it sounds like location to you is hugely important.
Hugely important. Like, if we could have the Boulon location in the Water Street Phase 2, I know that I can deliver on the prospect of putting such a beautiful concept that isn't really represented in Tampa. And I think that we'll replicate the success of Boulon.
And in a lot of big cities, there's these 24/7 steakhouses. And I've always thought how badass that would be to fly in at like, 1
Yeah.
a.m. or you catch a late night concert and it's
Yeah.
like very, very late,
I know.
or even imagine going out for drinks, partying.
So,
and
so
then
Boulon's open till 1:30 on the weekends, and we have full-on dinner reservations at midnight now.
I love
That
that.
never existed in this city
No,
before Water Street came on.
I love the idea.
So those
of
people
that
who
energy.
have moved here from Dallas or from LA or
Right.
from New York or Chicago, where you can eat anything you want at any time of the night. Those cities.
Kitchen's closed.
Yeah, exactly.
None of
There's
that.
none of that. So we're very proud to see that it's moving that way. And there may be time for a 24/7 steakhouse.
We got to get there, right?
Yeah.
The city has to get there. So back to the business part of it, right? You've spent on Boulon, the build out, close to $7 million, right? You've got to order very, very high quality meats and seafood. I'm sure it's extremely expensive to go ahead and order all this stuff.
It
You've
is.
got to pay all these people, accept rent, all this overhead, right? How do you make your money back on $25 martinis? It's just in my head, I'm like, that is a long road. Is there a sort of investor debt thing that works out on a monthly? Like you don't have to go into.
So I mean, we have a pool of investors that make up 40% of the equity of our businesses. My partner Andrew, Joe, and myself make up the other 60%. That 40%, we had long overruns at Union, over budget, over time. Everything was more expensive. We built that restaurant during COVID. Disaster. One electrician gets COVID. What happens? The entire electric crew walks off the job. Well, the plumbing crew is like, we're not staying here. That guy had COVID. So we had, that thing went 15 months over time and $3 million over budget. So, but what we did, because we did our original fundraise, Andrew being very smart, he's like, look, I don't think that, that was our fault. We were too ambitious to put this out and try to do it. I want to solve for this. I think we had between the two restaurants like a $5 million shortfall. Well, we didn't go back to our investors and go, okay, so we raised 10 million, we need another 5. We solved for that 5 million through our own lending partners and let them know, look, here's the deal. Good news and bad news. Bad news is we're super over budget. Good news is we're not looking to you for it. We're going to go solve for this, but we're going to pay that debt down first before we're starting to give dividends out. So it's going to be a little longer haul, but we've been blessed enough to be busy and be able to pay debt down alongside of still giving out some distributions. The first couple of years, I think we just gave tax distributions out so they could, because the restaurants were making money, but we weren't able to distribute it. We were paying debt down.
Right.
But we didn't want them to come out of pocket, pay tax on phantom money that went to debt.
Right.
So we would give them, and again, this is the brilliance of Andrew and my partnership there. And they're, Will Sedlowski, who's our CFO and partner, he's amazing. And what they do, because they have big hundreds of millions of dollar funds for their development in real estate. They own many, many projects all over the world. He's got 8 offices, I think, all throughout the United States. So they understand the debt vehicle and how to use it in many different ways. That was never part of my, I knew how to have money to open one restaurant, and then I knew how to make money at the restaurant to do it. You asked about Boulon, I'll get back to it. Boulon has a tremendous alcohol to food ratio. You make 80 cents on every dollar sold at the bar.
Oh.
You make 25 cents on every dollar sold in food. So the alcohol really helps in the profitability of a concept, especially when you're doing many, many millions of dollars a year in revenue. So say, I'm not going to tell you what we do, but let's just say we do $5 million in revenue at Boulon. If we're selling 2.2 million in liquor and 2.8 million in food, there's lots of profit to show from the alcohol. And so that's how that matrix ended up working out for us. It's been very good and profitable.
Hence that big bar up top
Hence
right
that
there.
big bar. That's correct. And
Man.
lots of those martinis.
So let's talk about why so many restaurants fail. There's so many concepts that go out. I just saw in the Business Journal today that melting pot kind of interesting concept downtown is going away after 2 years. So many fail. And particularly I'm noticing ones that don't have an alcohol component. Maybe that's tricky thing to get past when you're only dealing with maybe wine, beer, and some food.
Correct.
You figured out a way to be super successful in the restaurant industry, but you've done it kind of at every level of scale. You've had these smaller concepts. I mean, you have concepts that people don't even really hang out. It's like a grab and go bowl
Yeah.
spot, you know, and
Yeah.
then everything all the way up to a
Callies and
Boulon,
yep.
right? So why do you think so many restaurants fail? You probably know many people that have came to you and said, "Man, I can't figure this thing out."
Yeah.
Jeff."
As I told you, I've consulted over the years, and I'd say 90% of my consultations are don't do this.
Wow.
It's very difficult. You might not have the stomach for it. I know you have money, and you've seen operators sit at the bar and talk to pretty girls all night and think that I could be a restaurateur. Well, that's not, that is the tip of the iceberg of what it is that I do.
Yeah.
Understanding the financial matrix and how all of that has to work in order to be profitable to the bottom line. And, we still have months where we don't do as well.
Mhm.
Like it's a constant grind, but you're on it constantly, and you have to have the systems implemented and the controls and processes to where everybody, and I mean everybody within an organization, is incentivized to be profitable.
Yeah.
Meaning that, they get their base pay, and, we pay better than most. And we give, all of our leaders start out with 22 paid days off. Well, that doesn't exist in my industry. That came from Andrew saying, we've got to create a really wonderful, safe space for people to want to leave wherever they are to come work for us. And remember, like, this is just my true belief is this is what we do. It's not who we are. Who we are is, going with your wife on date night and strolling to a little cafe. That's who we are. Going on vacation, taking the kids to Disney, or going to Europe and eating in a cafe and having too much bread that you're going to pay for. But that's who you are. So we want to protect that voraciously for our people, to let them know, look, we're going to give you way more time off than what you would ever have. Like, that's like insurance company kind of time off.
Is on a national level, like state to state. I mean, you grabbed this superstar woman who was your GM, now your director of operations. You kind of took her away from where she was. It sounded like she was kind of planning on moving anyway.
She wanted to come back home, but she didn't find, it took her years. She'd been looking for 2 years, and until like her dad put her onto me, and then she researched us and saw what I wanted to build with Boulon.
There's a process, right?
She was like, oh my God, these people kind of talk like how I think. And, just like.
But keeping those people is kind of my point, right?
Correct.
Like, is that why you're adding in those days? Is that why
finding, hiring, and retaining amazing people?
Because it's probably very competitive.
It
and
is
I'm
very
sure
competitive.
other groups are looking at your people going.
They are. And all the time. And, I didn't set out to create a company to where I tried to, indenture people. I wanted to inspire them and let them know, look, you can have my job. You just better come correct for it. Takes all you have all the time.
I love how you talk about like any job here is for sale, essentially.
Yeah.
Like
all of it.
Always
hiring.
Anyone could be let go for non-performance, but also anyone has the opportunity to
rise
keep
up.
Climbing.
And they see it, right? They see, my bar manager at Boulon, who's a great young kid, super dynamic, but he started as a server assistant at Forbici.
Wow.
He's 25 years old, makes a ton of money, but has a lot of responsibility and, can step up to the plate. Like, is he perfect? No, but none of us are, but we're all learning together. And it's up to me to set the expectation and to give them the tools that they need in order to be successful. And I believe that we're doing that.
Wow. You mentioned that you are not only a restaurant guy, right? You are a true entrepreneur. What other businesses are you involved in?
So I've got an amazing business that's like having a renaissance and exploding right now called Grand Theming Studios. It's a 3D thematic fabrication manufacturing company. Wow. Again, I told you everything great in my life comes from my relationship. So it's a childhood friend of mine. We went to high school together. His name's Jason Hullfish. He's one of the best artists in the world. He became very famous on TV for doing, you can pull up Grand Theming Studios if you want to see the crazy shit that we make. He was known for doing super innovative, high-end and creative kids' rooms. So like LeBron James's daughter, like Ben Affleck's son, Like he's done all these
Oh,
unbelievable.
dude,
Yeah, yeah,
what?
yeah. So you see what,
Probably, I'm sure the Instagram would
yeah, the
have.
Instagram's great. That'll show you all the stuff we do. But we do a lot of stuff for the Bucks and a lot of stuff for the Lightning. And you see
Ah, this is
Boulon's
where
big
you've
bottle.
got the heart
So
and the
that's
Forbici
upstairs at
bar.
Beacon. That's correct. He did that heart for me. So he's a childhood friend of mine that was this
Wow.
artist and was just trying to figure out like how to actually have a business. And so when I sold out of CRG before Forbici opened, I was, so I'm on the board of Advent Health, Carrollwood, and I started the foundation board there. And we were renovating the ER and we needed theming for the kids' ER rooms, distraction medicine. Like your little child comes in, 3-year-old with a broken arm. They're terrified. It's a sterile environment. So they wanted to theme him. I immediately think, oh my God, Jason Holfish, he's unbelievable. So I have Jason come and he looks at it and he's like, okay, well, I can do this. This is easy. I can theme anything. And I said, okay, well, give me a price for this. And he ended up giving me a price. And so, of course, the hospital world, like the government world, there's lots of money involved and everything seems to be way more expensive than it should. So our budget was way bigger than what he was bidding.
Wow.
So I said, I want to sit with you and kind of understand like how you're going to make all this stuff. And he's like, well, my buddy has this foam company. And so he's got his routers and hard coat. And so I sub everything out to him. So I got to pay him money. And then I have hard coat. I got to pay them money. And so it just ended up happening. And so I said to him, I said, look, we have extra money here. I think that like with this job, we can create this business.
Yeah.
And so that's how that started in 2017. We built Grand Theming Studios. And so now we do a lot of pediatric theming. We do a ton of work for sports organizations. Like, you'll see, we do a lot of church work, ton for nonprofit. And we're doing a ton of work for a company that does like a majority of the theming for Disney right now. And it's, it's not very sexy or anything, but it's like, if you go to the reels, these are posts, click on the reels. Yeah. Oh no, you got to sign in. But anyhow, yeah. So you'll see some of the cool things. And he's like, I said to him, I said, look, you're the best in the world at what you do. You should be living atop the mountain with the biggest house. And so he's like, look, it's really, for me, it's the people. Like, and so we teamed together. And so, the hurricane came and blew the roof off of our old warehouse. So we had to move. So we're moving as we speak. Started moving on the 14th of February. So we're rebuilding this new amazing, we got 11,000 square foot warehouse that we're going to buy. And I really think that business is going to explode over the next couple of years because we're getting so much, during COVID, a lot of these companies, these theming companies closed down.
Yeah.
So you'll see like,
God, they're so detailed. How cool is that?
It's all made out of foam and fiberglass. We do a ton of work. So those are all the big CNC machines.
Oh my gosh.
See all the routing and stuff.
I mean,
we did that. There's Forbici. He did all of that stuff.
I can imagine a million different applications. I mean, I'm sure like you can get involved with theme parks. You mentioned Disney.
We do a ton of, we do Busch Gardens. So you've been on Kwanzaa, the big, well, we did that sign. God. So when you walk up to it,
wow.
Do a lot of work.
And so you kind of were almost like the business development side of that and the
yes,
business guy.
Just contacts. He does all of the work and manages all of the shop and has really been largely doing everything.
Look at this thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's a church. That's
wow.
City church.
Very
City
cool.
Life.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, that's something I'm super passionate about. I've got a tech educational company called gettough.com. And it's kind of, we inspire through videos, kind of teach life skills to kids that are underprivileged or, not growing up in that, traditional way where they have, two parents at home kind of teaching them how to be, a productive part of society and kind of all of the skills, the soft skills it takes in order to be a well-adjusted, balanced human.
So many kids in this country go through that, including myself. My parents got divorced when I was about 5. I grew up mostly single mother. She was always working.
Yeah.
So when I was coming into my 20s after college, by the way, I went to Florida State too. Go
Noles, baby.
And
I just got a great message from Coach Norvell.
Yeah.
We had a lot of the we had a lot of the football players come eat at Union last week.
Very cool.
And so he left. I was like, oh my God, this is so awesome.
By the way, some of the best sushi in town is at Union.
Thank you. I agree.
Shout out to you guys.
I agree.
And so, when you graduate college and you have an ambitious mindset and you don't have parents that were either in business or maybe weren't there for you for whatever reason, you always look for outside mentorship. At least I did. You're on YouTube. I was always
We have the same
books.
upbringing. I was raised by a single mom, high school educated.
She was working. I'm at daycare,
latchkey
after
kid,
school.
come home, McDonald's on the, that was my life. But my mom always instilled to us that, look, you may not have two parents at home. You grew up without a dad, okay. But it's what's inside of you, your work ethic. Be innovative, build great relationships. You come from great stock. You've got tons of love in your life. And, she got me a big brother, back then, the big brothers, big sisters. So I had a big brother and, I had a few duds at the beginning, but she wouldn't stop. And so finally, like at 11 or 12, I got this guy who was fantastic. And he kind of taught me what I needed at that time to have success. And I was a fearful kid.
Do you feel like that was a launch point for you? Like, had you not had 100%, that relationship with 100%. That guy?
That's why I give so much of my time, and I'm an entrepreneur in residence at these colleges, because I'm trying to speak to that little 12-year-old kid of me saying, if I could have this success, all of you guys are going to be
so many
super
kids think
successful.
They have no shot, but it's just not true.
It's not true.
Anyone has a shot.
It's not true. They do. Yep, they absolutely do.
And you never know who it's going to be. You don't really know who your inspiration is going to come from when you're growing up and you feel like you have nobody. Like for me, oddly enough, it was an ex-girlfriend's dad who was the first person in my life who I really talked to. He was an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
He had an awesome relationship with his children. He was making a shitload of money. He took us to Vegas. I was like, whoa, like
I want to have this life.
I was like, you can be a big baller and have your children love you.
Yes,
it's like, correct. You don't have to be this guy off
that's gone from his family.
I was like, you can do both. It was I think I was maybe 20 and I was like, whoa, like this guy's
that's amazing.
Changed my mindset. Without those people, those people are game changers.
I had a soccer coach who was from Scotland. He was huge. He was a bricklayer, a mason, but he instilled in me, he's like, you can do anything you want to. Don't ever let anybody tell you. He's like, my passion is taking young kids like you and creating great men from them.
Wow.
And, I lay bricks so I can do this. He goes, and bricks are great and I build houses and there's structure there and I'm proud of that and it's all well and good. But at the end of my days, I'm not going to think about the bricks I build. I'm thinking about all of the young men that I've inspired to go on and have, so it was just, back then in the olden days, we didn't have phones. We didn't have, Like it was no games really.
Right.
I mean, I'm outdating you, but it was people that made the difference. And they were giving you the nuggets of saying you can do anything that you want.
In a lot of ways, I don't want to say it's easier for kids today because it's certainly not, right? There's these huge barriers to entry. Things are expensive, all that sort of stuff. But information is easier.
It is.
And kids today have,
fingertips.
Oh, absolutely. If I wanted to really open up this cafe, of course I could talk to you and other people I know, but I could dig into YouTube and
they tell you step by step.
YouTube
exactly
University, man.
That's right.
That
is right.
Literally, man, we covered it all today.
Yeah, it was great.
This was
felt
awesome.
like it went like this. How long have we been?
I know.
Here?
How long was it?
Wow.
Hour 20 minutes. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Very
thank
welcome.
you for
Thanks
being
for
so
having
open. Me. Dude, this was awesome.
Thanks for giving us a platform to come on and just kind of talk about what we do.
Absolutely. And I got to get your partner, Andrew, right on.
Yeah.
He is involved in so much cool stuff on the real estate side. I actually didn't know he was deeply involved in Next Level Brands
the
too.
general partnership is me, Joe, and Andrew. That's what Next Level Brands is.
Wow.
Yep.
Very, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole property over there where you've created Union, that to me in my head and a lot of other people, that's like the business lunch spot. I met Andrew there one time.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. But that is like,
because I told him, we were together before this and I told him I'm going, he goes, I watch those.
Tell him to come on, man.
I told him I'll get him on for you for sure. And you should have, I don't know if you've had my partner Titus.
No.
Thad Bullard, you should have him on.
Maybe I'll have a next level podcast,
Yeah.
and then you guys can announce your new concept
That's
whenever you
right.
find the
I
space
love
for
it.
it. Jeff,
Thanks so much.
thank
man.
you
I
so much
appreciate it,
again.
brother.
All
It was
right.
great.
All right. Bye, everyone. See you next week. Hey, guys, if you want to watch episodes just like this one, make sure to click right here to view the rest of our full episodes. And also make sure to subscribe by clicking right here. Thank you for watching.